What email solution do you use for communication? Example like Microsoft or Google, and
G
why?
Suite.
And why?
Yeah, sure. So G Suite, because the price point and the degree of integration and the quality of the mobile apps is my most preferred, and most of my clients and colleagues also use it. So
Do you use I'm assuming you use the Google Calendar along with it?
yes, yeah, the full G Suite, Gmail, Calendar, and Drive, I use extensively. Yeah.
Okay. When you are getting responses from your campaign, how are you keeping track or organizing them?
For campaign responses, I keep track of them. I use a G Suite labeling convention of year and month, followed by the primary tag that I'm campaigning on, because I typically campaign by a single tag. So I send the email. Obviously, I don't have the email that I sent, but I know the subject line to expect. And so when I get those replies, I then put it under that label in Gmail.
Okay. And are you creating a hierarchy or order to your responses?
Only I'm creating a simple 2-layer hierarchy, because I put it all under network, and then campaigns live under the network label. So it's just a 2-level nested label, so that I have network as an overall thing, and then individual campaigns to my network under that network
And
label.
just curious, how did that evolve? How did you start? Because you obviously had a big campaign, and what did you learn from when you first started that process to getting better over the last, not only 4 or 5, 6 months, but from the first campaign to the next campaign? How did that evolve?
Yeah, so because I use labels for some other things, I knew that I wanted to namespace my campaigns under a parent label. So how I started was I was doing labels on where I would do year, month, day. And then what I found was the day is actually not useful, because I'm staggering these out, and it doesn't really matter that, my C-suite was on this day, and VP was on this day, and director was on this day. What really matters is the year and month, because I'm trying to hit people on a quarterly interval. So the date was just visually confusing. And it affected the sort order of my labels. So that's when I dropped to year and month, followed by primary tag.
It may have been years or longer when the last time you communicated with your contact. How did you approach those conversations? The folks that you haven't spoken to in 5, 10, 15 years.
It was, I crafted the message of my first campaign, having in mind that there are some people I had spoken with 3 months ago, and there were some people where it was 10 or 10 plus years. And it was, just framing that broadly. And then when we got together, it was, what I had to prep for is just always, because some days I would have somebody I talked to within months, years, and decade plus. And so I would try to ensure that they were spaced out enough to where I had a bit of buffer to okay, I haven't talked to Kevin in 11 years. So let me look at their LinkedIn profile, see what they've been up to, because I kind of know, but I also don't want to assume I know, because then I'll screw up and say, how's it going at Schlocko Corp that you were at 7 years ago? And they're like, dude, I haven't been there for 4 years. And I did screw up and do some of those, by the way. So I thought I knew, and then got in, and they're like, oh, well, before you emailed me, did you look at my LinkedIn? Or and I'm like, so I learned through experience, give myself a little bit of time, because for people where it's been longer, you really do need, and I usually do prepare for a buffer of 15 minutes before those, of this is somebody I've known for a long time. I also haven't talked to them a long time, and I need to not screw it up. So That's what I did. I basically, I buffered time ahead related to how recently I had talked to them. People that I'm in contact with every month, 2 months, it was like, just get the time slot. We're just keeping the conversation going. But yeah,
Yep.
anybody where it's been, like 2 to 12 years, it's like, give yourself some time because you don't want to look like a fool.
What did you use to organize your meetings on the calendar in simple calendar invites, calendar tools, and what, what do you recommend?
I leaned heavily on, I'll say this broadly, I leaned heavily on calendar automation. There is no way I would have kept up my professional schedule and just my professional workload and the volume of meetings that I book in my campaigns without calendar automation. Now, for me specifically, that means using Calendly. I already had an investment and a familiarity with Calendly, so I went with that. And I developed, I first started with, I'll tell you what I started with and what I'm doing right now. I started with, I had a template that went to a Calendly workflow where people could pick whether they wanted to talk to me for 15, 30, or 45 minutes. And then that would take them to the meeting that they could book. Two things, or yeah, I did three, but two things. Two things. There are some people who will take up as much time as you can give them. Right. And even though you don't necessarily have that much to talk about. So that was an issue. I had a lot of people booking 45 minutes, where we really only had 15 minutes of updates, 15 or 30 minutes of updates. And when you email 350 people, it's like, whew, so I switched from, and the second thing what I found was that some of those people also would abuse that workflow and they would book multiple consecutive meetings with me because they wanted free consulting advice. Yeah, so it kind of came to kind of an odd point. Like I had one person book 3 45-minute things with me within 2 weeks because they just wanted to ask me all kinds of questions about my area of expertise, which I'm willing to help people, but at the point that they're, scheduling, 180 minutes with me in 2 weeks free, it's a bit of a problem. So I actually did away with the workflow thing. And I just would reply initially to someone, I'd wait for their reply and then see if they said, I'd love to catch up. And if so, again, using I'm going to talk in Calendly specific terms. I would then reply with a single use link. I went to using a single use link with a meeting link that I felt was appropriate to the kind of conversation we needed to have. And that avoided the people abusing being able to, use that same link multiple times.
I mean, the good news is, even though they were doing that, it has to make you feel good that people.
It's great. Yeah, it's great to be wanted, right?
That much. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
great for people to want to catch up and like book multiple meetings. But and like you and anybody who's, where a quarterly campaign is, can be anywhere from 60 to 80 meetings, that you can't have somebody taking up 180 minutes in 2 weeks if you're gonna get to everybody.
Right. Now, a common concern with folks going through this communication is, how did you feel about, providing a Calendly link to your network? You didn't feel that was, too kind of salesy? You felt okay about it?
Yeah, I felt okay with it. I'll say that. I'll caveat it with in my specific industry niches, sending Calendly links is very normative. So for me, so in my, so it's not like I'm sending a HubSpot very or Salesforce, book my meeting on Salesforce, it's like Calendly, kind of neutral. So, but if I was sending out a Salesforce link or a dynamic, Microsoft Dynamics, like I could see where people are like, but even then, for people who got my email when we had our conversation that they booked via Calendly, I did have some people say like, so why are you using CRM bots to keep in touch with me? So there was some of that. I got some of that, but it was through a different kind of lens. but I did get some of that, like, you're being kind of salesy with keeping in touch with me. And what I told people was, yeah, look, I've wanted to be good at this for 15 years and I haven't been. And a big part of what's enabling me to do it is I've begun to leverage automation. And when
And
you're,
obviously, and it's funny how, and we've talked about this, then everybody agrees pretty
and
fast.
they're like, oh yeah, hell, like, and actually those people, when I just say that, they're like, yeah, hell, if I was going to try to keep in touch with everybody, I can't do it. I can't do one-off emails. I'm like, no, me neither.
Hmm.
So
So you would, in your opinion with Calendly, you didn't have anybody that felt, turned off by it. You felt the feedback more was probably thankful that there was an easy way to kind of to schedule this instead of going back and forth 4 or 5 times with emails.
I think I had 5 people in my first campaign who actually signed up and started using Calendly because they're like, oh my God, that was so much easier than me and you emailing each other back and forth 7 times.
Right.
So.
What method do you use when you do communicate? Are you on the phone? Are you doing Zoom? Are you doing in person? Do you find any more effective than another?
It's a mix for me in video. I'll say I have very few, but maybe 10 or 15% who want to do phone. Most of mine want to do video. I would say the largest amount is Zoom, but because of the industries within software that I'm across, I have Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams people. I actually have a few Amazon people who insist on using Chime, but whatever. But so I have, I have Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams accounts set up for business. So I enable those in Calendly, and other platforms like it will allow you to integrate with the different platforms. So when someone goes to book one of my network check-ins, they actually have a choice. And so they're allowed to check their platform of choice. But I would say Zoom and Google Meet are like the far away majority.
What topics do you think were most often discussed? Do you lead the conversations or do you let them lead them?
So for my first, I think your first campaign getting started is very distinct from the subsequent campaigns. Because with the first one, you're catching up with everybody for the first time and who knows how long. And for some people, it's been regular, but you're contacting them in a different way. So my first campaign was structured around what I found worked for me was I had an opening spiel that I got down to about 1.5 to 2 minutes, where it's like, hey, well, like I said in my initial message, I've wanted to get better at keeping in touch with, well, I usually open with just hey, it's so great to reconnect. And, when we were at, company Y together, one thing that stood out about you to me is this. And that's why when I went, through my network and like, who do I want to keep in touch with? You were one of the people that I added to that list. And that was a great opener, I think, to avoid it feeling salesy, because I let him know right off the bat, there's a reason I picked you. Like, I didn't pick my entire 1,500, connections on LinkedIn and spam this. This was a curated list down to 350, which was already too big, but you're 350 out of 1,500. And here's why. Here's why, because what stood out about you was this. And so they really appreciated that, someone remembered or recognized the thing about them that might have been a year ago and might have been 12 years ago. And so then I said, yeah, and I've been on this journey. I just decided I'm going to try to get better at this. And then I found this platform that really helped me have an action, like help me have a concrete action plan for how am I going to get better at this? How am I actually going to get better at this? And that's where we are today. So, that's me. And, you saw a little bit of what I've been up to. And sometimes they'd ask questions about, so how did that last place go? And why did you leave? And then it was just like, well, how about you? So I tried to keep my update overall to like 7-10 minutes max, and just go, how about you? And then let them just tell me what was going on, right? And then there would be some back and forth, but what I found was, as long as I open with, here's why I've selected you as part of my campaign, here's why and I didn't say campaign, but here's why I selected you as part of people I want to stay in touch with. Here's how I'm even trying to stay in touch with people, and a little bit more about what's been up with me. So what's been up with you? And so I generally found that across a broad range of people, and I went really broad. I mean, there were some people that I mean, we were always, for some people, we were always two people in a room or in a group, an exec group, but we weren't collaborating day over day, and that format, even for those people where I was just like, you stood out to me for this reason, so I just thought I'd reach out. That format was even palatable for them. And being in software, I have a lot of introverts, and so palatable for introverts with whom I had a very little contact.
You know,